Welcome to my journey through the Bible. This will be applications you can apply to your life and a little more in depth about the chapter. We are in Leviticus 27 1 through 34. And we have to realize that all that we have is because God has allowed us to have it, because God has blessed us with it. Now, when the children of Israel gave their first of everything to God, I think most of it's self-explanatory: their land, their fruit, their cattle, their livestock. When it came to their firstborn child, a lot of times they would give their child to the priest to raise them and to be a godly man for God, to learn God's laws and ways, and to work in the temple and to teach others and be an example for others. Now, as we look through our life, God gives different people different amounts. Sometimes God blesses you in many ways. Sometimes he blesses you in smaller ways. And the thing is God may start off giving us just a little bit to see how we're going to do. How are we going to use the resources that God has given us, the money God has given us, the time and our health that God has given us? If we use it wisely and use it to help others, then God will give us more. But if God gives us a certain amount and we are not responsible or a good steward of the things that we have, then God may take some or all of it away from us. Now, everything that we have belongs to God. That's our land, our house, our jobs, our cars, our vacations, our children. And God asks us to give some back. So when you look at the bigger scheme of everything that God has given you, it's really not that difficult to look at your paycheck and write out a check for God's work for the church. And this amount that you write it out for, that's between you and God. You decide the amount that you give. God gave the Israelites guidelines and gave them ways in how to give back to God. And we would be very wise if we still followed these same guidelines that God gave to them. Now, when God blesses you with a child, then you pray over that child and you give it to God, male or female. You give her or him to God. You pray over them and you say, God, I'm going to do the best I can with this child, with this blessing. But then, God, I give them to you so that you would put other people in their lives. In areas that I'm not equipped to teach them, you would put other people into their lives. Where I fail to teach the Bible, put other leaders and teachers in their lives so that they understand the love of God. And God protects our children in ways that we cannot. When you give your 16-year-old keys to a car and you let them drive away, you have no control as to what happens on that road, but God does. God controls the car, the drivers around them, the weather, everything. So God can take better care of our children than we can. And God will guide each one of us as he sees fit. That may mean that our children have to learn some hard lessons on their own in order to have their heart turned back to God. In some cases, it may mean death, and that is a very hard pill to swallow. But God knows best. And sometimes death is better than suffering. As a parent, we don't want our children to feel pain. We want to protect them from everything that this cold world throws at them. But unfortunately, that just is not possible here. It's not possible for us. It is possible for God. And this is the life that we have since our Savior was taken out of our lives. We live in a world that we have to have hard work. We have pain, we have hurting, we have suffering, and that's all part of living. But there is a day when Jesus will come back and he will take care of all that pain. He will take away all the pain, all the tears, all the suffering. And that's a day that I pray, Jesus, come, Jesus, so that we can end our suffering and our pain and all the heartache that this world gives to us. But then on the other hand, I also pray that Jesus will wait a little longer, because there are so many people that have not made that connection with Jesus. They have not committed their life to Jesus. They don't have a relationship with him. And so I pray that there's a little more time for people that believe in Jesus to reach out to other people who don't, that can bring them into this salvation. But the bottom line is, I have to always pray for God's will, God's timing, and God's way. Now, when we make a vow to God, we need to consider what we're going to say and the cost of it before we make that vow. Because once we've made the vow, it can be very costly and even deadly at times. And we will see that as we read throughout the Bible. And it's kind of a lot like a loan. When you give your word, you sign that paper and you say, I'm borrowing $50,000, and that's the amount I'm going to pay you back with interest. Well, it's not going to go over too good with the bank if you say, I'm only going to pay you $20,000 because that's all I can afford. What do you think the bank's going to say? So we have to realize that we have to be faithful to God. We have to be faithful in what we say. And God tells us that our yes should be yes and our no should be no. So we need to think about what we make a commitment to and what we say we will borrow and pay back. Make sure that we're able to pay it back. And then we also have to look at the things that God has given us. We are to be good stewards of not just our money, but also our time and our talents. If you look at 10% of a day, 10% of 24 hours is 2 hours and 40 minutes. Do you give 2 hours and 40 minutes of your time every day to God? Do you give more than that? Now, I'm not one to judge. I'm not one to pass judgment, because God's the only one that can rightfully pass judgment. But I know that we start where we are, and God will meet us. but we also need to make sure that we're taking a good look at our life. And we are looking at the things that God has given us, and we are to be sure to give that back. And once we realize how much time, money, talent that we need to give to God, we need to do it willingly. God says He loves a cheerful giver. That's in 2 Corinthians 9:7. So Leviticus is full of God's commandments that He gave to the children of Israel. But these commandments, they still apply to us today in our everyday living. The same laws that God gave to the Israelites at the foot of the mountain, they still apply to our life today. And if we applied them to our life, a lot of things in our life would go a lot smoother, a lot easier, and we would see a lot more of God's blessing and His characteristics, and we would try to become more like Him. Even with a changing culture and society, God's still always the same. He's the same today, yesterday, and forever. And we need to be consistent with the way that we apply God's laws to our lives, to our circumstances, our families, our job, and to our churches. So may God be with you in everything and in every way.